example is not the main thing in influencing others. It's the only thing. Albert Schweitzer. We've all heard someone say it. Maybe you even said it yourself. I'll start acting like a leader when they actually promote me and give me a raise. Or maybe something like, I'm happy to mentor someone, but they've got to come ask for my advice first. But here's the uncomfortable part, which you probably already know. Your actions and your daily standards are already leading the people around you. You're broadcasting who you are every day without saying a word. So the question isn't whether you're leading, it's where you're taking them. We all know that person who's always helping steady the situation, but they're not the defined manager or leader. The person everyone goes to when things get difficult, because though they don't have authority to make decisions, they're someone who has knowledge and influence. There are those who solve problems, those who make things easier for others, and those who are always looking out for everyone around them, but nobody ever asks them to do it. At the same time, we also know those people in the position of leadership and authority who somehow never seem to influence or lead anybody. So if you're waiting for a title to start caring, you've already failed the test. Leadership is a choice, not an appointment. Look at the person next to you, your peers, your friends, your family. You don't need someone to give you permission to look out for them. You don't need a promotion to clear a roadblock for somebody who's struggling. Yes, authority can be appointed. Anyone can get a badge, a title, or a corner office. But being a leader, that's earned through your actions. And everyone around you is watching. But there's a reason this topic gets confusing. It's because authority and leadership look similar from a distance. Both can direct people. Both can influence outcomes. Both can change what happens next. But they're not the same thing. Authority can be assigned through a promotion. Leadership can't. Someone can go to work tomorrow with a new title. They can have more responsibility, as well as more people reporting to them. But none of that automatically changes how much people trust them, listen to them, or want to follow their example. Being able to lead is not the same as being in charge. Think about the people that you've respected most in your life. There's a good chance some of them have never had formal authority over you. They're the person who encourages and mentors you. The person who takes ownership instead of waiting for instructions. The person who raises the standard without having to tell everyone that they're doing it. Additionally, no one probably assigned them to do these things, but you just started paying attention. That's the unique aspect about leadership. We don't usually decide one day to follow somebody. It happens gradually. Our confidence is built. Our trust accumulates. Then you start believing that if something does get difficult, this person will probably handle themselves or the situation well. And if you look at it that way, leadership becomes less about position and more about the behavior that gets repeated over time. Which also means something else. And this part's a little more personal. If leadership isn't created by title, then the absence of title isn't what's stopping most of us. Sometimes we tell ourselves we're waiting for the authority, but maybe what we're actually waiting for is someone to tell us to do it. So then if leadership doesn't begin with a title, why do so many of us still feel like we're not leaders until we get one? Now, I don't believe it's because of laziness in the sense that you don't want to lead. More often, it's about what we perceive as fairness. It's natural for you to think that if I'm going to take on more responsibility, put in more effort, and help with more problems, shouldn't that come with recognition? And where that way of thinking can make sense, that isn't the problem. The problem is when recognition becomes the requirement. Because then you stop, or never start, looking for opportunities to contribute, unless there's certainty that your contribution will pay off. You begin treating your motivation to be a leader as quid pro quo. I'll take on that responsibility after they promote me. I'll mentor someone only if they show me that they're committed. I'll care more about what's going on around me once everyone else cares more. But that way of thinking is flawed because opportunities rarely come without some validation first. Say, for example, a professional baseball team wouldn't give someone a contract assuming that once they're on the team, they'll be able to hit a baseball. That ability has to be there first. In the case of leadership, more often than not, you'll receive the responsibility because you've already shown aspects of being a leader. Now, this isn't about doing extra work just to do extra work or becoming the person who helps everyone while burning yourself out. It's more basic than that. It's about noticing whether your standards change depending on who's watching. Because if your willingness to contribute disappears when the recognition disappears, then maybe the title isn't the thing you want. On the other hand, people will say leadership is about service, taking ownership, and setting the example, which all sounds good until you realize what it feels like in reality. Because in most instances, doing those things can feel invisible. You help somebody, and they continue on without even saying thank you. You step in early, clear obstacles, support those around you, and keep your standards consistent. But the only reward is that things, at least on the surface, appear to stay normal, which can create frustration for you. You might start thinking, if nobody sees this, does it even matter? Because you're bound to run into moments where doing the right thing doesn't come with recognition. No pats on the back, no public recognition, no invitation to sit in on a leadership meeting. So that's where the idea starts becoming less about leadership and more about character. Character in your everyday version of how you perform. Because if your everyday character isn't the motivation, that doesn't make you selfish or wrong, but it may reveal that you aren't waiting to lead. You're just waiting to be seen. There's something else that can be frustrating about leadership. You don't get to decide whether other people experience you as a leader. You can decide how you show up. You can decide how you hold your standards. You can decide whether you take ownership, whether you remain reliable, whether you make people around you better. But at some point, the rest of it leaves your control. Because leadership has its own social component to it. People decide for themselves who they trust, usually through an accumulation of experiences. They notice who remains calm when things get out of whack. They notice who takes responsibility without making it a performance. They notice who creates less chaos instead of more. But most of the time, they won't tell you that they're noticing. And that's what makes this difficult, because there isn't always feedback. You don't get an email that says, hey, people trust you more now. You don't get told, someone watched how you handled that and it changed how they think about you. However, there will be changes that you can recognize. People will just start coming to you more frequently to ask you questions or get your opinions. They trust your judgment and will question your decisions less, if at all. Because over time, your actions answer the questions before your words ever do. Which means leadership isn't really self-declared, as more of a reflection back. And there's a good chance something has already started happening, whether you've noticed it or not. And maybe this is where the concept comes back around to less on leadership, but rather more on identity. Because underneath all the talk about opportunity, recognition, fairness, there's usually a more personal question. Who do I believe I'm allowed to be before somebody acknowledges it? Because most of us, we wait until we feel confident before we express ourselves. We wait until we're officially responsible before we take ownership. Or we wait until we're recognized before we start behaving like the person we eventually want to become. And a lot of times, caution is what holds us back. But there's a difference between forcing authority and accepting responsibility. One is trying to become important, while the other is deciding your standards don't need permission. Because if leadership is only something you become after somebody chooses you, then your identity will always stay in someone else's hands. You'll keep waiting for the opportunity, the title, or the invitation. You'll keep believing that's when everything will fall into place. But maybe those moments don't create leaders. Maybe they simply reveal the real you. Maybe the promotion doesn't make someone more dependable. Maybe it shows who you already were. Maybe being trusted doesn't create steadiness. Maybe what people notice is the steadiness that's been there for years. And maybe leadership isn't the decision other people make about you. Maybe it's the one you make when you're not trying to be a leader. There's a part of us that we have to contemplate every day. It's not whether you see yourself as a leader, not whether other people do. It's just whether your standards change depending on the circumstances around you. Because life has a way of making titles feel more important than they are. It tells us things start later, when there's more time, when we have more confidence, when we have more authority, when there's more recognition. But most things that become apparent later usually started quietly, much earlier. Maybe some of the people who've influenced your life never thought of themselves that way. Maybe they were just the person who stayed dialed in, the person who followed through, the person who noticed someone else, the person who decided their standard wasn't going to depend on whether anyone acknowledged it. And maybe somebody has experienced you in that same way without ever saying it. Not because you had the right position, not because you had all the answers, rather, just because of how you showed up. So maybe there's nothing to chase, nothing to announce, nothing to prove, only a personal question to carry with you. If they didn't give me a title tomorrow, what parts of who I want to become could I still begin doing today? As always, thanks for spending a few minutes with me. Until next time, stay sharp, stay grounded, and keep showing up.